the power you can muster to survive this terrible test, Great One.
I can handle it.
I was talking to the tall one, Shorty.
Hey!
Developing a video game is hard. Developing a really good video game is even harder. But developing 3 really good games in a row that all maintain a consistent, arguably ever-improving level of quality across a solid trilogy is a task very few developers can or will ever be able to boast. Concluding a trilogy is such an important thing, in fact, that many other franchises, even outside of the video game realm, have continuously failed to deliver even a competent third entry, much less a great one. And to be fair, it is a tall ask to keep everything that made not 1 but 2 previous entries great, while still finding room to introduce new elements and deliver on subplots and narrative promises made across 2 previous stories. The truth is, there's been a lot of third entries that go too far, or try something different, or lose too much of what made the first 2 great. In some cases, they double down a little bit too hard on the wrong things and jump the shark, so to speak, by taking a franchise somewhere it didn't feel natural for it to go. Sometimes, the trick is to dial in on all the right things without overdoing it, and learning when less is more. So, let's talk about Jak 3, the 2004 action-adventure conclusion to Naughty Dog's Jak and Daxter trilogy.
Yeah, we thought we'd hang out, catch some rays.
This isn't a game.
Jak 3 hit the market on November 9th, 2004 as an exclusive to Sony's PlayStation 2, much like its 2 predecessors that were both also PS2 exclusives. Also like its predecessors, Jak 3 later received ports and marketplace availability on the PS3, 4, 5, and PS Vita. What you're seeing on screen now is actually emulated footage, which, good news, works almost flawlessly with the exception of some pretty rough frame drops in 4 specific sequences, but otherwise the entire game is both completely playable and works great nearly the whole way through. I didn't use the fan-made open goal PC port this time around because Jak 3 support wasn't available yet and seemed to still be quite a ways off by the time I was ready to start playing it. As for the game itself, very much unlike its predecessors, Jak 3 only saw a development time of around 1 single year, which was a massive shock to me upon realizing it. Not only because of what they were able to accomplish with this game in such a short time period, but also because a 1-year development cycle for a video game, especially a third entry in a successful franchise, is completely insane. I've talked about this in different ways across my videos, but I still cannot emphasize enough how much of a difference even 1 month can make to the outcome of a video game state on release. This was back when updates and patches weren't even a concept. Whatever the game was when it was printed on that disc was what everyone was stuck with. No updates, no patches, nothing. So Sony throwing $10 million at a game, which was the actual budget of this game, and allowing it to only receive 1 year of development time was a very risky move in my opinion, even if it did end up working out. Even in a series known for annual releases like Call of Duty only managed to pull it off by using different studios so they could each have 2-year development cycles.
Be honest.
And also hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, well, cut it out! If you moved that fast a long time ago, I'd still be wearing pants!
I'm not harping on this because the game is bad, or because it's riddled with issues and I'm using its absurdly small development window as an excuse or something like that. Jak 3 is actually exceptionally well made, even compared to games with 2 or even 3-year dev cycles. In fact, all of my primary issues with it are related to its writing rather than anything technical. This game is brilliant. But the reason I'm harping on that 1-year development cycle is because I can't believe they actually managed to get away with it. I've always been, and still am, of the opinion that every publisher-backed video game should see a minimum of a 2-year development cycle, preferably even more if warranted. Most of the time when I'm finding problems in a game I'm covering, it's pretty obvious that a little more time in the oven would have resolved it. So with that in mind, I have to point out the very intuitive methods in which the developers were able to reuse prior assets or design ideas in gratifying ways that saved on time and resources without feeling cheap or compromising the experience. Although that said, I do have to admit that the whole time I was playing it, I actually kept thinking to myself that this whole game does feel way more like part 2 of the second game's narrative than a new entry in the series in its own right. The differences and improvements between the Precursor Legacy and Jak 2 were enormous, whereas the differences between Jak 2 and 3 are much less noticeable by comparison. What I'm trying to say is that Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy is a complete and satisfying standalone experience, but Jak 2 and 3 are both two parts of one experience that kinda have to be played together. This is due mostly to how closely Jak 3 marries itself to Jak 2. Even Jak 2 could be mostly played on its own, but Jak 3 very much needs Jak 2 in order to feel complete, which I have no problem with at all, as I think it's a completely acceptable route for a sequel to require prior consumption of its previous entries to fully enjoy, but it is something I found a bit jarring after playing all three in a row. Jak 1 through 3 feels like 2 games, despite being 3 games. I hope that's coming across the way I'm trying to convey it.
That was close.
Oh, are you beginning to care? Demo says...
Of course, I do need to clarify that Jak 3 is by no means lazy in terms of introducing new mechanics and elements into the series. A lot of sequels back in the day would strip the character of their prior upgrades while making the player re-earn them over and over again with every new entry in order to retain that sense of progression. Although Jak 3 does technically do this too, you have pretty much all of your previously acquired weapons and abilities back within the first 2 hours of the game, along with several new weapon types and special abilities. The rest of the game from there is just an avalanche of continuous new progressions for your Morph Gun and Dark Jak powers until you've almost beaten the game. Not to mention the introduction of an entire new subset of powers in the form of Light Jak, which we first saw briefly all the way back at the finale of the first game. Oh yeah, and of course an entire new desert-centric hub world complete with a variety of Mad Max-style dune buggies to play with.
Those are for the big boys. You can use that one.
What a runt!
Seems to fit you.
The team apparently got the inspiration to pursue developing this style of vehicle gameplay across this new biome after having played a game called Smuggler's Run, where the player drives a buggy around a large map to collect points. Interestingly, Smuggler's Run was actually made by a small company called Angel Studios, who would go on to become Rockstar San Diego, and was published by Rockstar Games, making this yet another Jak and Daxter game directly influenced by Rockstar. Kinda weird it happened twice. Speaking of that, it's also kind of weird that Naughty Dog has 2 different threequels with a desert theme. Although I'd argue that Jak 3 is a significantly better game than Smuggler's Run in pretty much every way. In fact, it's honestly probably better than most games in general. Much like Jak 2, this game has just about everything going for it, although somehow it has a different flavor of everything. Of course, I'm being hyperbolic with my usage of the word everything to mean it has a bunch of cool stuff. Dozens of additional and far more creative weapon mods for your Morph Gun, multiple special variations of drivable buggy vehicles for your desert excursions, a solid selection of interesting locations to explore both new and old, an awesome flying vehicle sequence that I couldn't believe they managed to squeeze in, a new, even more malevolent enemy faction, and easily the most mini-games we've seen so far. And most of these things function exactly as you'd expect, with some working even better than you'd think they would, while being spread out across a tight-knit climactic narrative that rises to the highest highs of the series so far, while unfortunately burning up in a few places as a result of getting just a little too close to the sun. I.e., there's some issues with the plot. In specific, its handling of a character or two. Speaking of which, let's get into the story of Jak 3. Naturally, there will be massive spoilers ahead as I'm breaking down pretty much the whole story, so consider yourself warned.
Ha! We kicked your scaly tail! Back off, you filthy animal!
Jak 3 takes place roughly a year after Jak 2, and a surprising amount of changes have occurred in Haven City across that time. A new council has formed to take the place of Baron Praxis's rule, called the Freedom League, and following a sudden massive metalhead assault on the city, the council decides to blame Jak as a scapegoat to explain how the metalheads gained access to the city again, suggesting that his friendship with Crew means he's been secretly compromised. Which is where Jak 3 starts off, as a ship lands in the desert with a new character named Count Viger overseeing the exile of Jak to the Wasteland.
By order of the Grand Council of Haven City, for heinous acts and crimes against the people, you are hereby banished to the Wasteland for life.
This is a death sentence, Viger. There must be another way.
Your protest was overruled. This dark eco-freak is dangerous. Now drop the cargo!
Daxter and Pecker opt to join Jack in his banishment, not wanting to leave him alone, and Ashlyn slips him a beacon that she says will help him be located before perishing in the desert. We then get a montage of Jack, Dax, and Pecker wandering through the sands, slowly suffering the heat and dehydration as we see some flashbacks of the Metalhead assault on Haven City, and even get a great sequence of the palace collapsing. Then, eventually, they all pass out.
Right. Good plan, Jack. A nap would be nice.
After laying there on the brink of death for what I assume were a few hours based on the sun's position, a group of mysterious wanderers find them there.
Here's the beacon we were picking up. Who gave you this? We'll take them with us. Let's move. I smell a storm coming.
We then cut to Jack and Daxter recovering in a pool of water as they try to regain their strength after nearly dying. The man who rescued them introduces himself as Deimos, the king of Spargus City, much to Jack's confusion as he claims that no one should be capable of surviving outside of Haven's walls, much less an entire city. Deimos addresses this claim as he points out that Spargus is made up of people who were exiled from Haven City at one time or another, and this is where the Banished now live, in the small city they've made for themselves. Jack and Daxter's right to stay and live among them comes with a heavy condition, however, as Deimos tells them their lives now belong to the people of Spargus, and that they must make themselves useful to the city and her people if they wish to remain. Their first task is to prove themselves worthy of being there at all, by fighting in the Spargus City Arena.
Complete your training, then enter the arena. Just the bravest crawl out and are allowed to stay in Spargus. It's quite simple, really.
What happens to the ones that don't crawl out?
Then it will be as if we never found you.
I was afraid of that.
So here we are in the Spargus City Arena, where all of the citizens gather to watch Jack kill several dozen other people for sport. This is pretty brutal for a kid's game, but man, is it cool. We also see Pecker has become the new advisor for Deimos, somehow. With all of the big setup and world building done, we actually begin the game in full as the player is able to refamiliarize themselves with the controls across this training course. This is a really fun throwback to the Collectathon origin of the first game, actually, as we move through the course to gather these blue orbs. I thought this part was such a fun way to open the game. Also, shout out to Naughty Dog for getting fully rendered 3D models for their arena audience this time, instead of 2D PNGs. Or at least if they are PNGs, they're significantly more convincing this time. Of course, it doesn't go on for too long before we have to get some real combat going again.
Now let's see how you rate against the living. Readjust the matterformers. Prepare the arena for full combat.
Prepare the arena for full combat.
I just said that.
And we're back to straight up killing people with a shotgun again. 20 people to be exact, and at first I was confused by this because why would Deimos be throwing his own people into an arena to die like this when there can't be that many of them here to begin with? I figured out later that all of these guys are captured wasteland bandits, which are a whole other thing I'll tackle later, but yeah, in a throwaway line, we find out that these are bad guys, not warriors from within Spargus. Jack still has his dark powers though and busts them out to shred these bandits to pieces, securing an easy victory in the arena. A shadowy monk figure witnesses this, however, and seems to scowl at him over it. Deimos is then informed that Jack's dark eco-injections have given him special abilities that make him dangerous, which makes Deimos consider that he may be a useful asset.
Your bravery has earned you your first battle amulet. If you are victorious in 2 more arena fights, you will earn your citizenship to Spargus. Here is a gate pass to allow free passage in and out of the city. But beware, there is no true refuge outside our walls. The desert is less kind than I. And for your victory, a gun mod is your prize.
Oh yeah, now we're talking. Hey, what do I get? Nothing, as usual.
Our heroes then meet one of the locals named Cleaver, who was somewhat impressed by their arena performance and offers them work feeding his leaper lizard in exchange for access to one of his multiple vehicles. That monk Jack saw scowling at him earlier comes back up again here though, as Jack is wandering through Spargus City when he comes across her investigating some kind of ancient machine. This monk is named Seam, and she seems to have quite a bit of animosity towards Jack after witnessing his ferocity in the arena. The two bicker back and forth for a bit before something interesting happens.
You must leave this place. Heroes think they can save the world when they themselves are lost. You could not possibly understand the dark forces at work here.
Don't talk to me about dark powers. I want to know what this is. Stand back.
This is where we get one of our mini-games. I'll talk more about these later, but the important thing here is that Jack cracks the terminal and it gives him a set of dark eco crystals. These will come into play later too. Also, the thing explodes.
Even you cannot save us from this, hero.
Hey, I'm the real hero here. You can call me Orange Lightning. Zing!
You may carry the color of our creator's animal, but we have plans to save ourselves. Stay out of our business. You and Orange Lightning are not welcome here.
Yeah, so the precursor monks of Spargus are not big fans of our heroes, but that's fine because they have bigger fish to fry right now. On our way to meet Cleaver for another odd job, I took some time to explore Spargus City a bit. It's for sure the smallest hub of the game, and maybe even the least utilized, as you'll only really come here a handful of times to get assigned some missions. Although I do think both this and the other two hubs are really cool, and I'd have loved to see more done with them. I would 100% read a novelization of Jak 2 and 3 that poured more lore into this world and its characters, though I doubt anything like that is ever going to happen. Anyway, Cleaver keeps his promise by giving Jak and Dax the keys to a buggy and then challenging them to a race.
I'll let you keep that little vehicle for as long as you live. And if I win,
I don't have anything.
I'd say that yappy rodent of yours is a bit bony, but skinned and buttered, he'd make a nice treat. My vehicle against him.
Forget it, buddy. Jak would never...
Done. What? Don't worry. If there's one thing I can do, it's race.
Surprisingly, we only race on this track one time, which is crazy because they build out this whole course and it's surprisingly big all things considered, and after we beat this one race, the course just sits here taking up space on the Wasteland hub map. It's not really a problem, but I definitely expected one or two more races written into the story as Jak fought to earn his place in Spargus. Once we wrap up this race, we're technically free to roam the desert as we see fit now, but there's not a whole lot to see out there beyond sand and a few spaces we'll be coming back to later, so you may as well go back for your next mission anyway. Now that we've got the new foundation, setting, and characters explained, I'm going to begin only covering missions that are either central to the plot or just too interesting to ignore, much the same as how I handled my coverage of Jak 2's plot. I say this because there's a lot of filler missions in this game. I don't say that as a negative, by the way. I really enjoyed most of these lower impact quests, but there are a lot of them here. Like how the next mission we're on is to drive around the wasteland and collect ancient precursor artifacts, or rescue citizens from Spargus lost in the desert before a sandstorm hits. The game is fantastic and absolutely worth playing, so you should go experience all these levels for yourself anyway. After collecting all of the artifacts from the wasteland, Jak and Dax head back into Spargus City to hand them over to Deimos, where he introduces us to a really cool new inclusion of this game.
That armor you found, it is very rare indeed. Pecker here says it's the very armor Mar once wore in his battles for this planet long ago. Keep it for yourself. Trust me, you'll need it.
Throughout the game, Jak continuously finds these ancient pieces of the hero Mar's battle armor and equips them, which means that the further you get into the game, the more Jak's appearance changes into that of a real warrior. I mentioned when covering Jak 2 how much I love it when a character's appearance changes throughout an adventure in small ways, and this is exactly what I was talking about. It's a minor inclusion, but it adds so much to the feeling of growth across the story to see Jak's changes manifest physically like this. Oh yeah, and we're sent out into the wasteland to take out a few wasteland metalheads, which, as it turns out, are a bit different than what we were used to in the last game.
Have you ever seen a wasteland metalhead?
No. Why?
Nothing. Just wondering. Go get 'em, heroes.
One of the best new aspects of Jak 3 is a real commitment to massive set pieces like this one. Epic set pieces would go on to become a staple of Naughty Dog games, particularly with games like the Uncharted series, but I can really see how Jak 3 was setting the stage for that to become the case. That isn't to say Jak 2 was absent of cool set pieces, but Jak 3 dials it up to 11 with tighter, more linear scripted sequences. You'll see what I mean as we go. Once we've taken down the final Metalhead beast, Jak and Daxter find the crystals they were looking for along with a communicator with a familiar voice on the other end.
Metalhead Commander, report! What's happening? If you lost that cargo and you're still alive, I'll kill you myself. I want every dark eco-crystal you can find! Time is short! Did you hear me? Wait, not you.
I don't like the sound of your voice.
Ha! You sure kicked sand in his face. Oh yeah, that was good.
That face looked familiar.
Now you're getting paranoid, buddy boy. Come on, Bigfoot, let's get back. This desert gives me the creeps.
Once we leave the wasteland and make it back inside the walls again, Jack is informed that it's time for another arena battle, the second of 3 that will be needed to prove himself as worthy to become a full citizen of Spargus City. I actually really like the role that these arena fights play in Jak 3, and the narrative idea of having Jack kill his way through hordes of captured desert bandits for the city's entertainment in order to earn his citizenship fits right in line with the brutal shift that Jak 3 has taken in its tone so far. Although I do think it's a bit disappointing that the arena subplot is so front-loaded, since it's what replaces the racing subplot from Jak 2, and that was appropriately spread out across the game's progression, whereas the Spargus City combat arena stops mattering around the end of Act 1. Eventually, we do enough favors for Cleaver for him to grant us access to another of his buggies, and this one is designed to jump really high. No, seriously, that's the whole purpose of this thing. It's literally called the Dune Hopper. With this thing now available to us and a new icon mysteriously appearing on our map, Jack and Dax use the Dune Hopper to vehicle platform across a series of small islands in order to reach the location of an ancient precursor temple built on a slightly larger island. You wouldn't think platforming in a dune buggy would work very well, but it surprisingly feels great actually. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. Reaching the top of the island, we enter the ancient temple. This place is a recurring area that we return to multiple times across the game, and a lot of major story events happen here, along with a massive share of Jak 3's more traditional platforming gameplay. I'd even wager more than 50% of its classic platforming exploring sections all happen in the various sub-areas of this temple, like the volcano across the way that Jack is trying to make his way over to.
All we have to do is hit those accelerator rings and we're golden.
Oh no! See any feathers here? Looks like fur to me. No feathers, no flyer de axle. There's no way you're gonna get me on some precursor monk crap! Absolutely zippo chance! Forget it, finito! Fat chance! Not gonna happen! Nope! Nuh-uh! Never! Jack!
I couldn't believe they actually programmed this glider section in like this, because it's so cool and it never happens again. They did all of the work to make this sequence function for a single set piece, which is not only crazy, but also the case for multiple other equally, if not more so, spectacular set pieces later in the game. We actually fly over the entire wasteland hub here and can see all of the major landmarks from Spargus City to the oasis and of course the massive volcano in the center of the hub itself that we're trying to access. Although while this is really cool, it also helped me realize later that the whole wasteland hub is just a medium-sized desert island, which kind of shatters that idea that you're in an infinite desert somewhere outside of Haven City, and you're actually just on a specific island. It could be one of those ludonarrative dissonance situations where it's not actually an island, and that's just to keep the player in the hub, because a certain character does manage to drive straight from Spargus to Haven through the desert in a buggy, so I don't know what's up.
Well, now we can't go back the way we came. Let's go check it out.
Right behind you, partner! Far behind you.
This volcano level is probably the most like the first game Jak 2 ever feels. Lots of platforming, environmental hazards, flut sections, leaper lizard sections. It's actually really cool, and I'd even call it one of the more memorable levels of the whole game. The same goes for when we leave the volcano and return to the Precursor Temple to bypass a lot of its challenges. Playing through it all feels like such a throwback and is a great balance between everything introduced in the first 2 games into some of the best levels we've seen so far in the entire series. At the end of it is where things get really interesting, as Jack finds himself face to face with an ancient Precursor statue before overhearing a conversation between that monk girl and Count Vigor, who banished Jack at the start of the game.
You told me this could be done. Now make it so!
But we have so little time. The Daystar approaches. You know what it brings.
Unfortunate, yes. We will deal with that as soon as I have full access to the catacombs. Just continue your work, and I'll deal with those idiots in Haven. I promise, you will meet your makers.
Why are the catacombs so important?
Oh, yeah, the Daystar. Let me take a second to talk about that. Throughout the game, there's a super bright purple star in the sky that some of the characters refer to as the Daystar. I think it actually gets closer and closer to you throughout the game as it literally approaches the map, but I'm not 100% sure on this. It could have just been my brain playing tricks on me. Anyway, this Daystar is hurtling towards the planet, and although we're not exactly sure what it is right now, we do know that whatever it is must be bad news. Jack finds another Precursor statue as it begins talking to him in order to warn him of the Dark Ones who are closing in on their return. I thought he was referring to a fleet of metalheads at first, but that isn't actually the case apparently. We're getting there. there. It'll all make sense.
Look into the light and receive a power, hero.
Okay, now you're scaring me.
Dax, the dark eco, it feels far away. I feel better.
This is where Jack first gains his Light Jack abilities. There's a few different powers he can perform, much like he can in his Dark Jack transformation, but the first is a regeneration power that heals him when needed. Moving on from the temple, we head back out into the desert to knock out a few errands, such as saving a bunch of Spargus citizens from a sandstorm, facing down our first boss battle in this mysterious machine that tries to kill us out of nowhere with Jack and Dax barely surviving, and honing our skills on the Spargus City defense turret. This part is cool mainly because of what it's setting up for later, but a little target practice never hurts. Then, after all of that is done, we're finally back to the arena to earn our third medallion and legitimize Jack and Daxter as true citizens of Spargus. Cutting through the plethora of bandits that somehow keep getting captured to be thrown into the arena, Jack unexpectedly finds himself staring down the barrel of an old friend's peacemaker.
Sig?
Jack? Daxter?
Sig!
Well, don't you two look sorrier than ever.
What are you doing here?
Honing my skills. Let's finish this.
Whoa, come on, Sig. I'm not gonna fight you.
If we don't, he'll kill us both. Rule of the arena. Sorry, nothing personal.
Uh-oh.
Blasphemy! One must destroy the other. Complete the test, or face worse pain.
I just know I'm gonna regret this.
Seize them!
Deimos scolds the three contestants heavily, telling Sig that his time in Haven City has made him soft, and that they've defiled the sanctity of the arena. Deimos then reveals that Sig was his spy in Haven all of this time, feeding intel back to him, and due only to his faithful work over the years has he opted to grant them both the chance at redemption by going straight into a metalhead nest to eradicate the seed pods located within. A dangerous mission meant to cleanse them of their weakness. Deep underneath that volcano is the aforementioned metalhead nest, and it's a location we enter 2 times as part of the story. Once now and once later in Act 2, both with Sig tagging along for the ride. This is one of the few times I saw frame drops while playing, and I think it's because of the enclosed nature of the caves and the number of things on screen, but I'm not sure. Not really an issue though, because like I said, we only ever come here twice, and each time only for a couple of minutes. Once our work here is done, Deimos grants mercy to the trio, saying they won't be banished, and then warns them to never again defile the arena, which won't be an issue because we don't ever fight there again. Once we drop Sig off back at Spargus, Ashlyn contacts Jack saying it's important that she speaks with him immediately and asks him to meet her out by the Oasis to talk. The pair aren't really thrilled to see her, and Jack seems to have made up his mind that he's not interested in returning to Haven, although he does thank her for the beacon that led Deimos to them in the desert. He asks how it is that Ashlyn knows Deimos, and she dodges the question before a raiding party pulls up out of nowhere to kill them. Jack transforms and wipes them all out as a sandstorm engulfs the fight, but it isn't long before they're all dead, and Ashlyn makes one last bid at convincing Jack to return to Haven.
Kira wanted me to give you this. Jack, your friends need you. I need you.
The city threw me out, remember? They can rot for all I care.
But what about your...
Get it! Just leave. I have new friends now.
So the hero I knew did die in the desert? Or was it long before that? Don't you remember who you are?
I'm through saving the world.
Hey, we got our jetboard back, and it doesn't play as big of a role in Jack 3 as it did in 2, but it's still needed for a handful of challenges and just fun to play with overall. Despite making it very clear to Ashlyn that Jack is not interested in going back to Haven City, we will still be going back to Haven City very shortly. I feel like they should have had some kind of moment of reflection, or maybe a conversation between him and Daxter about this where Jack softens up and agrees to go back, but we don't get that here. Instead, they just kind of have him accidentally wind up back there without meaning to. You'll see what I mean in a second. Before that, our heroes head back to the Precursor Temple and use both the jetboard and the seal Ashlyn gave back to them to access a new area leading to another Precursor statue that grants Jack the light eco power of time manipulation, which is basically just him slowing down time for platforming sections. It's a super cool power, but I didn't end up using it very much. At the bottom of this same area, Jack and Daxter find some kind of massive Precursor tunnel where Pecker has been waiting for them. Somehow.
Onan says we must get back to Haven City. She says the catacombs are the key to the planet's very survival.
You boys up for a little ride?
So we're flying through these precursor tunnels in an airspeeder while my frame rate fights for its life against the onslaught of speedy gameplay and flashy visuals. This takes me back to those in-between areas of the first game, which I enjoyed, and it plays kind of like a fast-paced minigame where you're dodging and shooting obstacles. There's 2 sequences like this in the game, and they're both mad cool. At the end of this tunnel, we enter a vast eco-mining operation carved into some canyons.
When Mar built Haven City, he must have carved out these old caves to get at the eco power.
Sheesh, that Ma guy must have never slept much.
I'm going ahead to tell Onan we're back. Watch your tail feathers, Jack. This is a spooky place.
Narratively, I feel like we've started rushing a bit here, because right after Ashlyn flies all the way out to the wasteland so she can ask him to fly back to Haven City with her because they need him, he declines only to take a much more complicated and time-consuming route back to Haven City anyway, like 20 minutes later, because Onan sent Pecker to tell him he needs to come back. Like, what? Was it just because he wanted to ride the precursor airspeeder? Why are we fighting our way through a canyon right now to reach Haven City right after Jack said he's done being a hero and has no interest in returning to Haven City? I get that they'd probably built out this whole multi-level sequence of the tunnel and the canyon and whatnot meant for taking the player back into the city and had to make him say no to flying back with Ashlyn so the player would have a reason to go through it all, but they could have just not had Ashlyn show up in person to begin with. It would have made more sense if Kira contacted Jack over the radio instead of Ashlyn and told him she'd flown a drone out to drop him a care package that he might want to help him survive in the wasteland, and then have that care package contain his jetboard, his seal, and maybe a weapon mod. Then have him overhear the group being shot at or something before losing contact, which sparks him to try finding a way back to Haven. Not only would this reinforce that the old resistance group fears violating the Council's decree of Jack's banishment, but it also adds to that lonely feeling of isolation out in the wasteland and contributes more agency to Jack's decision to go back. But Kira doesn't do that. In fact, Kira doesn't do much of anything at all in this game, which is an entire rant I'll save until after I'm done covering the story. Just feels like this whole part of the plot got rushed, which I'm sure actually is the case given the 1-year development cycle. Finally making it to the end of this canyon, Jack finds Count Viger waiting for him. The two have a brief confrontation where Viger reveals to Jack that he plans to access the lower catacombs beneath Haven City where an ancient precursor power is said to exist, and then use that power to fend off the darkness if the Daystar headed their way. He then admits that it was him who let the metalheads into the city to destroy the palace so he could acquire the power he needed to begin trying to find the catacombs without interference.
Excuse me, Count Vulgar.
It's Viger!
Yeah, whatever.
He then scapegoated Jack to get rid of him because he believes Dark Eco is evil and he plans to harness the power of Light Eco to eradicate all dark beings from the world.
Enough! We will stop the cleansing of the world with your demise. Behold, I now command the very power of the Ancient One! And this time, the Precursors will not have mercy on you.
This is the second boss battle of the game, but honestly it feels more like the first given how much work was put into it. We have to take down this precursor robot, learning its patterns and shooting these conveniently placed carts full of explosives. With the ancient robot turned into a scrap heap at the bottom of a chasm, we head up an elevator only to find ourselves back in Haven City, and man, has it looked better. This section of the city has been abandoned and overrun with metalheads, and it's clear how much effort the team put into delivering on the atmosphere of this familiar yet dead part of Haven when the player arrives. Perhaps too much work, because I think we only ever come back here once. I don't think the game ever makes it clear exactly how much time Jack has spent in the Wastelands at this point, but the implication seems to be anywhere from a few weeks to possibly even several months. I'm leaning towards the latter based on this interaction we see between Jack, Samos, and Kira.
Jack! Over here!
Samos! Kira!
Ah, Samos. Still as green as the stuff between my toes.
See, Kira? I knew I could feel Jack's energy. My boy, it's good to see you again.
This interaction is the beginning of some serious issues I have with the narrative direction of Jak 3. Samos, without missing a beat, immediately starts breaking down the situation to Jak about the state of the city and Count Viger's plans, with Jak recounting Viger's admission of the precursor power he's seeking in the catacombs. Samos tells Jak he'll have to find whatever it is before Viger does, before finally stopping to apologize to Jak about standing by while he was exiled.
And Jak, we're sorry for what happened. We should have stopped Viger.
I'll stop him myself.
I like Jack's maintaining of his edgy attitude here, and Samos apologizing is a start, but Kira says literally nothing. Talkative Kira from Jack 1 and 2 has nothing to say here. She just looks around and appears to feel bad. It gives me the idea that she feels guilty for something, or perhaps they had a falling out over something. Just keep this in mind, I'll be bringing it up later. Jack still needs to make his way back into the main city, and so fights his way back through the old Haven sewer system, which I actually prefer the Jack 3 sewer levels to the Jack 2 ones by a lot. They're much better here. Finally, on the other side of the sewer system, we wind up back at the old port district. Coming back here again after everything we've been through so far felt like home in a weird way, but slightly more gloomy due to the dilapidated nature of various parts of the district. This place has also seen better days. The naughty Atzel is still around, so we love to see that, and inside of Daxter's crib is our old pal Torn, still fighting the good fight.
Jack, I never thought I'd see you again.
Torn? What are you doing to my place?
We needed a southern HQ for the war. Plus, I kinda like the sign with the Atzel head outside.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
We use it for target practice.
Hey!
Listen, I'm sorry we couldn't stop Count Viger. We all are.
We just saw Viger. He's trying to use precursor technology for something.
Figures. That guy always was one monk short of a choir. We have bigger problems now.
Torn explains to Jack that things are getting bad across the city. A new mech-based faction of the old Crimson Guard are bearing down on the city with a new leader and seemingly no end to its mechs on one side, and the Metalhead forces are tearing Haven City's Freedom League forces to shreds on the other. To make matters worse, the city has been sectioned off with no way for the north and south sides of the Freedom League's leadership to link up outside of airspeeders. With Jack and Daxter back, Torn calls into the northern HQ to let Ashlyn know the situation.
Jack? I knew I could count on you.
That new KG leader's probably pissing in his... Wait, someone's jamming the signal. I think...
Errol.
I live! Still fighting for the weak link, Jack? Well, I've had a few enhancements since we last met. Even the metalheads have their biological weakness. But me? I'm pure metal. I'd love to meet you again.
So, Errol is still alive and kicking after his mishap in Jack 2.
I win, Jack.
And it seems he's Darth Vadered out, more machine now than man. Our heroes will have to worry about him later though. The main priority right now is to blow open a path deeper into Haven City so the Freedom League can link its forces. Should be easy enough so long as nothing goes wrong.
I'll handle this.
I couldn't not cover the fact that we play an entire sequence of Daxter controlling a rocket to build enough speed for it to blow open a path through some wreckage. It's a lot harder than it looks, but I love how many of these unique little levels are littered across the game. Also, Tess is back, and although she looks the same, she acts like a completely different character for some reason.
Did that mean old desert burn your itty-bitty paws?
She's lost it, and kind of insane now. She's also in charge of designing weapons for the war effort, which I'm sure is a great combo. She's in charge of the gun course minigame now too, which is where you'll find her for most of the story, even when it doesn't make sense at one point, but I'll get to that later. I don't love the changes. It's kinda like they abandoned all the nuance of her character from the second game. To be honest, this feels like a different person to me for the sake of doubling down on the romantic aspect of her and Daxter. Don't worry, that makes sense later too.
First, you have to prove you can protect my little schnookums in the new gun course.
Either way, it was just really jarring to me how different she is from her Jack 2 counterpart is all. I don't think her new characterization is bad, just jarringly different. Also, the voice of Tess is the only acting role Britton A. Avery has ever done, as in real life, she's a medical doctor and CEO who runs her own psychiatry practice out of California. This is probably because her husband, Daniel Avery, helped write the second game and helped both write and direct this one. Also, she nails the role across both games despite how different the character is in each entry. I wouldn't have guessed that she's not a professional voice actress.
Not bad shooting, Jack, for a guy. Now, I want you to protect my little baby with this, or else I'll hunt you down and hurt you real bad, okay?
Wow, I didn't know you had so much...
So after clearing out a corrupted part of the city, we're able to regain access to South Haven Forest, which looks really different this time around. And I'm not going to question it because it's still a great location and most of the missions we come here for are all also good. If you remember that mission in the Precursor Legacy where you drop green eco on top of dark eco infested plants, you'll recognize this bit too, since that's what we're doing here. I also really like this mission where we have to fly a vehicle full of explosives and munitions for Torn's militia while being chased by a bunch of heat-seeking rockets. This is another example of a one-off mission that just floors me with how many unique and interesting levels are scattered across this game. Easily the most we've seen yet. Also, this segment leads to an unfortunate fate for Daxter's naughty Opsal sign.
Crank that sign up to full brightness. Hang on, Dax. It's gonna be close.
My beautiful monk!
Speaking of unique levels, one of the very next things we do after that is drive a spider tank through the war-torn streets while tearing through hordes of mechanical KG forces. This game simply does not let up. They made this whole thing in like a year. I've seen worse games with twice the development cycle. With that gate blown up, access is restored to the northern part of the city, referred to in-game as New Haven, a new sector that was built sometime between when we left off in Jak 2 and now. We can't go meet up with our old friends just yet though. Jak is needed back in Spargus City for something. Luckily, we don't have to trek all the way back through that canyon again, and can instead just take this shuttle back out into the wasteland. Once there, Jak and Dax ride out to meet Sig outside of the Metalhead nest under the volcano again, and we drive through for the last time killing these Metalhead sandworms, because you can't have a sci-fi desert setting without sandworms. I actually kind of feel like these creatures were underutilized. I would have had a specific area on the Wasteland map where they might spawn and come soaring out of the sand at your buggy to make the world feel more dynamic and alive. Unfortunately, there wasn't really anything like that, and so far as I could tell, we don't get any random foes outside of the bandit buggies when free roaming. I also enjoyed the on-rails turret section right after this too. I'm telling you, this game went out of its way to be as climactic as possible, and I severely appreciate the amount of work they put into making that happen. While we're out here rampaging across the wasteland, Jak also stops in for a visit with Deimos, where the two connect a bit more and have a genuinely good conversation about survival and perseverance. Deimos says his monks are convinced the end of the world is due any day, yet he isn't convinced that he and his people can't survive and live past it. He then reveals concern over Jak relating the loss of his son.
You are shaping up to be one of my finest warriors, and I'll need you for the trials ahead. I mustn't lose you, like I lost my son.
You had a child?
Long ago. But much has been sacrificed in this war so that others could live. Anyway, it matters not. We're having serious trouble with marauders lately. I want you to take a vehicle and hunt down their warrior patrols. Go, and make war your own.
This leads into a really cool bit where we fend off a small army of marauders complete with multiple catapult trucks, which makes very little sense because where are they coming from and why do they have so many resources and cars? Well, it turns out we get an answer to that question in the very next mission where we enter a small building to take back an artifact that they stole from Seem and her monks. This bridge with these torches circling this tiny fortress. This is it. This is the Marauder stronghold we're supposed to believe that all of these bandits built all of those vehicles and live in this one building. Whatever, we're going off video game logic here, but I'm just putting it on the record that this so-called stronghold should have been way bigger and the Marauder should have played a bigger role in the narrative too. We only come here this one time and it's really just a glorified mini combat arena. I would have loved to have a more intricate, built-out Marauder stronghold to infiltrate and fight through, and for them to have been made a bigger threat overall. Like, every time you drive around the wasteland, you'll be fending off 10 to 20 of these bandit buggies minimum, and you're supposed to believe they're all being cranked out of this one structure? Again, I'm overthinking it. With the relics recollected for Seem, Jak's called back to Haven City again, which means we have to say goodbye to the wasteland for now and fly back home. It's time we finally make our way into this game's new district, appropriately referred to in-game as New Haven, and finally relink with our old friends again.
That's right, the Daxtonator is back in the building.
Daxter, Jak, you did it!
It's about time you two got here.
What took you so long?
Sorry, we only had a war in the way.
Great work, Jak. Let me be the first to officially apologize for the city.
Forget about it. I've got my own interest in this.
Samos breaks down their predicament regarding a so-called dark planet builder on the way that can only be stopped with precursor technology.
Also, the large number of eco-crystals being moved about can mean only one thing. Someone is trying to awaken vast precursor technology.
Why is Kira so utterly disinterested in Jack now all of a sudden, and seemingly not jealous of how close Ashlyn is to him now? Did I miss something? Doesn't matter, because here comes Count Viger to insert himself into the situation. Samos suggested Jack to lead an expedition into the catacombs to find the ancient precursor technology hiding down there, and Viger attempts to overturn the suggestion and place himself to lead it instead, promising that he now has means to activate a precursor planetary defense grid, which would actually keep them safe from the incoming threat of the Daystar.
If you beg me to do so.
Jack's always gotten us through thick and thin. I'm with him.
Here, here!
You're washed up, vegan.
Viger! It's Viger, you idiot!
Whatever.
Count Viger, I hereby dissolve the City Council and strip you of your title, command, and all privileges. Now get out of my sight.
What? How dare you! I offered you mercy, but now you will all burn in the precursor fires of creation. I swear it.
If she could do that this whole time, why didn't we get saved from exile in the first place? There's actually a lot of plot holes in this game narrative if you look hard enough, such as Samos knowing that the Daystar is a dark planet builder before we've looked through the precursor telescope to know that. Oh yeah, speaking of which, that's our next mission as we head back into South Haven Forest again to take a look into this telescope that we've been working to raise out of the ground across a mission or two up to this point. The game calls this an astral viewer, as the voice of a precursor speaks to Jack, telling him that the massive ship headed their way is the
seed of our destruction.
The voice then reveals that the precursors are world shapers and builders, going from planet to planet in order to terraform them or aid them in their acceleration. After prolonged exposure to Dark Eco, however, some precursors morphed into a new type of being called Dark Makers, who travel to planets in order to destroy, conquer, and enslave, and they're currently headed straight for Haven City. The voice then tells Jack if he can find the access tunnel to the planet's core, there's a control panel for the planetary defense system that can keep them safe from the incoming Daystar and the Dark Maker threat. I don't know why, but I love the whole Dark Maker turn this game takes. It feels like such a proper payoff to the setup of the first game where the main villains were humans who became corrupted by the Dark Eco, for us now to face an entire faction of the precursors who also got tainted by Dark Eco. Before long, Jack and Dax make their way to the old power station where we used to meet up with Vin in the second game.
I sure miss good old Vin.
Yeah, he was a good guy. A bit crazy.
Hey, who you calling crazy? I can't help it if the world is out to get me.
Vin! Wait a minute, is that you?
Yeah, it's me. Or actually, no, it's not. I'm a multi-layered hyperlinking digimemic bioconstruct superclocked mega memory construct, baby.
Turns out, Vin uploaded a brain scan of his entire personality into the eco-grid, allowing a snapshot of his past self to live on and help our heroes out. So I kind of hate this, mainly for two reasons. The first being that doing this feels like we're copping out of the death of a main character in the second game. Granted, that death was kind of blink and you'll miss it, even in Jak 2, but it still happened, and this undoes a degree of the void the player should feel because here he is. Maybe not the real him, but his character in practice. If it was just that though, I'd be happy to overlook it so we could see another few instances with this character and maybe see how he can play a role in the story. Which leads me to my second reason for not liking this. He doesn't matter at all past this encounter. He doesn't reappear, nor does he play a role in the plot after we leave this mission. I just feel like walking Jak and Dax through the empty power station was a chance to resonate on the impact of the last game and capitalize on the more isolating atmosphere of the game so far. Remembering how Vin used to be here and taking in the fact that he's not now. Anyway, Jak asks AI Vin if he can get them the access codes to the war factory where all of these Crimson Guard robots are being made. Vin says no, that one of them will have to go in after it themselves, which leads to Daxter being sucked into the computer to take on a Pac-Man-styled minigame. I mean, there's not much more to say about this beyond that it's harder than it looks. It's Pac-Man with Daxter's head. Grab all the dots, snag the code, and get out of there. With the cipher key to the war factory in hand, Jak promises to keep in touch with Vin, which is a lie unless he comes back in a later game, which we'll see if that happens or not, and we enter into Act 3. Back in the headquarters, the group goes over the plan to assault the war factory hovering above Haven City, and Jak, of course, volunteers to go in guns blazing.
Yeah, right into the hornet's nest. This is gonna be fun.
And so we come upon one of my favorite parts of the entire game, where our heroes mount up into what is essentially a combat fighter, and we fly around this station in an arcade-style vehicular combat game taking on dozens of mechanized fighters and turrets. I've said this repeatedly throughout the video already, but I simply cannot believe they only used this set piece once. Not only is it really cool, it's also genuinely fun. I mean, they built it out and it functions well. They easily could have gotten away with copy-pasting a reskin version of this mission near the end of the game. The glider section from earlier in the game is kind of similar mechanically, but is observably different and less fun for obvious reasons. Either way, it's really cool, and I had a spectacular time with this level. I even ended up trying to drag it out just because I was having so much fun. Once all of the anti-air turrets are destroyed, Jack lands the ship and heads into the factory to take this place down from the inside and put an end to this new mechanical KG faction. This is very much a retread of the Palace level from Jak 2, but I like that a lot because it makes this game feel like we're going through bigger and better motions and coming back stronger for every new fight, and at the end of this level is an old foe with a score to settle. Yeah, Errol has been behind the new KG death bots this whole time, which isn't really surprising, and not only that, he's been in communication with the Dark Makers currently on their way to unmake the whole planet.
I've been given the opportunity to wield a power even the precursors cannot control. Don't fret. You won't live to see what I turn this little world into. Maybe a rock, or a floating puddle of slag, or nothing at all. Complete oblivion! So hard to choose.
I won't let you do this!
And we have another boss battle, this time resembling the crew fight from the second game in how it plays, and I don't love it only because I really wanted the chance to throw hands on Errol after 2 games of him being the worst. Instead, we just use these bombs to damage him by proxy, which is lame. I mean, it's plenty in line with most of the other boss fights for sure, but I was a little let down. Of course, Errol loses the fight and makes a break for it, leaving Jak and Daxter to save themselves with very little time to spare. They may have won, but Errol survived and is still a threat.
Errol got away, but we shut down his robot factory.
That's good, but it is troubling to see what Errol is doing. I fear he may be trying to awaken that terrible dark ship before we can destroy it.
It's not over yet, and the Darkmaker ship isn't far off. Jak makes up his mind that their only option now is to access the catacombs beneath Haven once and for all, but the second he readies himself to do so, the precursor monk Seam contacts him to beg he returns to the Wasteland and protect their temple from an assault by Errol. Once again, the trip to the catacombs will have to wait. Jumping on a zoomer, Jak races to the shuttle to take him back out to the Wasteland, where he hops in a buggy and speeds out to the temple with haste. This is where we get our first taste of the new enemy type, the Dark Makers. Tall, dark, and spiky, these guys are no pushovers, and I found them to be some of the toughest enemies we face, and from here on out, there's going to be a lot of them. Also, Jak gets wings that let him fly. No, I'm serious, it's crazy and also super cool. Using this ability, Jak is able to reach Seam, where she informs him that Errol has now found a way to communicate with the Dark Makers and their time is nearly up. She then gives him a special precursor artifact before saying something rather strange to Daxter.
I have now seen the truth, and I am at peace. At least I was granted the gift of seeing the face of my creators. Thank you, little one.
Okay.
After doing a little bit of research, it turns out that Seam was supposed to die in this moment, and even the voice lines reflect it with how her voice is straining and she speaks of being at peace, but for some reason or another, they changed this at the last minute, choosing to keep Seam alive. Once again, before we can go to the catacombs, Deimos calls in and asks Jak to return to Spargus as they're picking up multiple massive signatures closing in on their position fast, and they need him to man the turret if he can. So we speed back to Spargus and find the whole city under siege from the Dark Makers. The Daystar might not be here yet, but it's closing in fast, and its scout ships are already touching down early. Jak fights his way to the turret, and one of my favorite set pieces hits as kaiju-like War of the Worlds styled bipedal monsters start touching down in the water and marching towards the shore. Yeah, it's a turret section, but the scale is incredible. I was really feeling that climactic third act energy here. The stakes felt huge, and it really came across like they were holding the line from a potentially world-ending event here. Whenever I think of Jak from now on, I suspect the mental image of these Dark Maker walkers terrorizing Spargus City will be one of the first things that comes to mind. If it wasn't for Jak taking them all down in this turret, there would be no more Spargus City. Stepping down from the turret, Deimos approaches Jak and thanks him for his bravery before revealing yet another narrative bombshell.
But when I was the leader of Haven City, time seemed grim then too. Take hope. Even the smallest weed finds shelter within the rocks.
Wait, you were once the leader of Haven City?
I came to the throne during the middle of the Metalhead Wars. Baron Praxis betrayed me and banished me to the wasteland. The rest you know. Anyway, here is your third and final battle amulet. You are one of us now. That war amulet is a beacon. If ever you need us, use it to call, and we will be there.
He then gives Jack the final piece of his new armor once worn by the great warrior Mar. With one city saved, Jack heads back to the other one still yet embroiled in a war. But once again, before we can enter the catacombs, we have to head back to South Haven Forest to insert the final piece of the precursor astral viewer given to us by Seam back in the temple, which requires Jack take out these turrets, and it's a lot harder than you might think it would be. Seriously, it might actually be the most frustrating part of the game. Once back at the viewer, Jack inserts the last piece, and after peering through the scope, something happens.
Get out of my head.
Jack? Jack? I'm losing you, buddy!
It's linking me into the Darkmaker ship systems. They're taking me to them.
Jack! Jack!
Jack's consciousness is linked to the control of a Darkmaker machine, and would you look at that, we even get a mech section. It plays nearly identically to the mech sections from Jak 2, but this one is a lot faster and more fluid to control, not to mention looks really cool. We stomp around, move some blocks, do a little platforming, and throw a lot of explosive pods into all kinds of important looking Darkmaker objects. Just all kinds of chaos.
Our hero!
What the? Daxter?
What? What'd you see? Let me look. Hello, elevator, bottom floor, going up. Come on. Ah, I hate being short.
It just seemed for a moment, it looked like... No, it couldn't have been.
If you couldn't tell, not only are things intensifying greatly, but they're also becoming kind of strange. Jak 3 starts off with a similar brooding and edgy tone as the second game, but as things have progressed, not only have we seen characters who should be more active become what feels like footnotes in the story, but there's certain homages and throwbacks to the Precursor legacy that you'll notice if you'd played it recently like I had as I played this one. After getting back into Haven City, Jack, Dax, Sig, Torn, and Jinx all come together to push through one last major operation to carry a shipment of explosives to the entrance of the nearby Metalhead Nest. It's another on-the-rails turret section like we got with Sig in the desert, but this one is through the streets of New Haven, and I also really like it. I'm a fan of rail shooters if I'm being honest with you, so these sections fit right in with my enjoyment of the game. And if you have to stick me with the turret section, then making it move around cool environments is a major plus. I mean, look at this footage. Is it not an awesome set piece? I told you, this game delivers. It's also really cool that we finally get to see Torn in action. He's always just the guy in the hideout giving out mission quests, and now we actually see him do something for once. Even if it is just jumping out of a moving vehicle. Still, not bad, Torn. Again, mirroring the end of Jak 2, the destructive duo fights their way through a massive Metalhead Nest, and I'd argue the layout is even better this time around than it was in the last level of the second game. At the end of this nest, however, is Errol himself, although rather than trying to kill him right away, Jak seems to wait and hear him out instead.
You're too late. I've already awakened the Darkmaker ship. When I come back, I will be wielding the very power of the Precursors. I'll see you boys soon.
Look at that, it's cool. It's amazing. It's the dark stuff. Ah, it's gonna blow!
Sig pulls up in a speeder just in time to save them before the nest blows up and eradicates the Metalhead presence within Haven City. They then fly back down to safety and say an unspoken goodbye, because it's past time now for Jak to finally fight his way into the catacombs so we can enter the planet's core and find that planetary defense grid. Only problem is, they don't know the way, but Onin does, and heading to her hut, she gives our heroes the direction they need before instructing Pecker to escort them to the catacombs himself. So he flies out to the edge of the city. You remember the ruined area we saw upon first arriving in Haven? That's where we're going again, only this time we have to jetboard over a wall and down deeper into the city ruins, and it's completely crawling with metalheads. It turns out we get to fight our way through the destroyed remains of the Haven City Arena, which is such a cool location for this penultimate stage. The place where we once raced our Zoomers and where we found Kira again in Jak 2 is now little more than a pile of reminiscent rubble.
The only hombres tough and crazy enough to take on these things are the Wastelanders.
You're a genius.
Yeah, that trinket's worth about as much as you'd get from a broke-down pawn shop in Southtown.
Looks like the communicator Jak tried to use didn't work out, but that's fine since he still has both light and dark eco powers to keep him alive, not to mention Daxter at his side. Oh yeah, and a new weapon that fires mini nukes. The only issue with this weapon is that we don't get to use it enough. If you couldn't tell, we're in the endgame, and this last trek through the ruins of the old Haven City arena makes for an awesome level to fight through. We have to use pretty much every ability we've gained up to now to get through it, too. Our light eco powers, our dark eco powers, everything. Jack will have to push himself to the edge of his capabilities to get through this one, and I'm telling you, that is how you end a game. All that he has might still not be enough, though. Metalheads are one thing, but Dark Makers are another story, and after finally finding Pecker, they get ambushed by 2 of them.
Jack, let me just say, before it's all over, riding on your shoulder, although it is kind of bony and uncomfortable, well, you've been a good pal.
You too, Dax. These adventures, they've been great.
Someone call for an army?
But you're a long way from the desert. I thought you said a smart warrior never takes his opponent head on.
That depends on how hard your skull is. I'd say you and I are both rather headstrong.
Let's finish this.
The car combat is one of the biggest new additions to Jak 3, so it wouldn't have been right to end the game without one last section dedicated to it, and with the tankiest buggy we've driven yet. It's fine. I like it conceptually way more than I like it mechanically. The driving is cool, but the environment is so littered with random objects that cause your vehicle to get stuck that it siphons a great deal of the exciting nature straight out of the mission to replace it with sheer annoyance. There's just too much wreckage everywhere to get stuck on. It's really frustrating. Fortunately, this isn't a super long section, but I did have to replay it a few times, which made it feel longer than it actually is. After a lot of driving and even more shooting, Deimos and Jak make it through the district and to the entrance of the catacombs to the planet core.
Deimos!
Not bad driving, kid. It was a good fight. And a good day to die. I'm very proud to have been by your side in the end. This world is not yet out of heroes.
We did well together. Don't move, Al.
Please, promise me one thing. Promise me you'll find my son, Mar. You'll know him when you see this. He's wearing an amulet just like it. A symbol of our lineage with the great House of Mar. Save the people, Jak. They need you.
So that's one of the big reveals this time around, and strap in because there's a lot of them coming. Turns out Deimos was Jak's real father, and although he never realized that Jak was his son, there's a lot of hints throughout the game that he could feel a father-like bond with Jak for reasons he didn't understand. Also, Jak's real name is Mar, hinting that somehow, Jak himself will become the Mar of legend that built Haven City in the past. He even acquired all of the pieces of Mar's old armor throughout the game. Look, it's a story deeply entrenched in time travel. You gotta just accept that the second you start Jak 2.
Father. Yes, you were that child. I took you from Deimos, hoping to harness your eco powers for my experiments. Then I lost you to the underground. You seem upset. Did I tell you too late? You were the son of the great warrior Deimos. Oh, and he never knew. How delightful.
Ah! Bigger!
Thank you for opening the door to the precursors. Don't worry, I'll be back to put you out of your misery.
After him, Jak!
You're willing to go down there? Without a fuss this time.
Yeah, well, don't get used to it. It's just that nobody hurts my best friend and lives to brag about it. Let's get him!
Look at that, a Daxter character arc. This game is really bringing it. See, this set piece got reused, and to great effect as we're pushing through another precursor tunnel towards the planet core, and it's looking sick. There were so many incredible ideas and unique sequences in this game, man. The duo pulls up to a room of total darkness before lights begin activating and another giant precursor statue begins speaking to them as they begin to initiate the planet's defense grid. It would seem Count Viger was waiting here for them, though, as he withdraws the GAT.
Proven your worth, warrior. We grant you the gift of evolution, the honor of becoming one of us.
Step aside! I will be the one who evolves into a precursor. The right is mine!
Be careful what you wish for.
It is done. Don't worry, Jack. It is for the greater good that I assume this role.
Even now, it may be too late. If Errol awakens the dark ship's cargo, all will be lost.
Listen, Glow Boy, we've been doing all your dirty work while you slept in the stars, so stop it!
Inefficient. I told you we needed a backup hero. We should have gone with Plan B. Ow! Hey, cut it out! We are unhappy with your performance. If you had been a true hero, you would have stopped Errol by now.
Yeah, so it turns out that the precursors are Otzels, which makes kind of sense. They tell Daxter his becoming an Otzel by falling into that vat of dark eco was a blessing instead of a curse. But why would it have been the corrupting dark eco that blessed him? Either way, these three are actually just silly little critters running a Wizard of Oz-style ruse about what the precursors are in order to secure the reverence of the planet and its populace.
So, we fluff up the myth?
And all of this time, they've been pulling the strings from inside of this pod hidden within the planet's core, where they try to orchestrate the safety of the planet by creating a hero capable of subduing their enemies, such as the Metalheads and the incoming Darkmakers.
These creatures are the great precursors?
And I wanted to evolve into the...
No!
A little drafty, isn't it? The only way to ensure that Errol will not awaken the ship's cargo is to go there yourself and stop him. We will send you there from here.
But the weapon...
Chill out, buddy. You should have Mondale minutes to go there and get back here pronto. I mean, way before the...
Hopefully before.
Ba-boom! Oh, yeah!
Let's move.
You idiots. I told you we needed a plan B.
And so we're back on the Darkmaker ship, only this time playing as Jack instead of the mech. At this point, I feel like the game has appropriately fulfilled honoring both the Precursor legacy and Jack 2 in its scope, progression, gameplay, and, in some ways, its narrative, not in others. I'll talk about that here shortly. Much like the Haven City Ruins, this is another level that will demand the player utilize all of Jack's new abilities to get through it, and again, I think that's fantastic. There's even a time limit bearing down on us the whole time as we fight through the ship with the impending threat of the ship's imminent demise ever present. After a solid fight through a brief but fun stage, Jack finds himself once again face to face with Errol.
All of these Darkmakers at my command. Just think what I could do.
You're through, Errol, even if we both die.
Jack!
Let's go, Dax.
As the ship falls apart and that thing Errol just jumped into hurtles towards the surface, Jack sprints across this bridge as it falls apart in epic style. I cannot emphasize enough the fact that this kind of game, what you're seeing right now, wasn't really something you saw a lot of. The level of style, the scale, crafted with such quality, it's peak, it really is. Reaching the portal, our heroes leap through just in the nick of time as they're teleported outside of Spargus City. The Darkmaker ship may be destroyed, but something really big and dangerous still made it down here all the same.
This guy just won't quit!
It's headed for the city. We gotta defend it. For Deimos.
The last charge of the Dark and Light Brigade! Let's do it, partner!
To the end.
In what is easily the best use of the Wasteland Hub area we've seen so far, we have to chase this massive mechanical terror across the desert in a buggy to try taking out its leg so we can board it. Both Halo 2 and Jack 3 released on the exact same day, by the way, November 9th, 2004. Which means that someone, somewhere out there, bought both of these games and took down two different arachnid-like machines in two totally different sci-fi games in the same week. What was going on in that era that had everyone adding giant spider robots into their video games and movies anyway?
He has an 80-foot tarantula.
And also, how can we bring that back?
He's got to fight a giant spider in the third act.
Oh, by the way, I think between leaving the Darkmaker ship and coming here would have been the perfect place to insert another flying section. Instead of teleporting Jack straight to the desert, I think it would have been cool to portal him to Haven City and have us fly around the KG Deathbot facility again and shoot down a bunch of Darkmaker ships descending upon the city or something. And then have him fly to the Wasteland to get shot down by the Walker near Spargus City and then jump into a buggy from there. I just think it would have been cool, that's all. After destroying the legs of the machine, which was actually a lot harder than you might think, the physics of these buggies control really oddly, Errol flies the head of the beast and crashes it into the sand right in front of Spargus. It's not over yet because he's still up there and he's still alive. So Jack climbs up the side of the thing, taking out a plethora of Dark Makers in the process before reaching the top and beginning a battle very reminiscent of the end boss from the first game. But better, I think. Much better, even. With every weapon he has, and while exhausting the extent of his abilities, Jack pushes his limits to take down the cockpit of the machine and put a final end to Errol while he's at it.
I have several questions.
Yeah, so Jack and Ashlyn, apparently. Where is Kira, you ask? I'm getting there. Let's wrap up the plot. We're almost done. The precursors thank our group of heroes as Sig assumes Deimos' throne, and Samos stares in shock that the ancient race he spent his entire life trying to understand are small animals. The Otzels then tell Jack that more adventures await him even still, as his story isn't finished just yet.
We owe you much, Daxter, for all you've done. For your bravery in the face of incredible danger, we shall grant you your deepest desire.
You know, I could really use a snazzy pair of pants, like yours.
Wow, those are sharp. I wish I had a pair just like that.
Be careful what you wish for.
Don't worry, honey. You get used to it. Oh, and you may want to shave some parts. Trust me on that.
Hey, thanks for everything, partner.
Jack reconciles to travel with the precursors as they ascend into the galaxy to find their next planet to build up, as Count Vigor prepares to join them, only to be kept there as a sidekick for old Cleaver. And so with that, Jack and the precursors ascend into the universe.
I couldn't leave you, Dax. With all our adventures ahead, you wouldn't last a second without me.
Ah, what a team we are!
Yeah, well, the next adventure, I call the shots. Put it in, partner. Ha! Psych! Oh, yeah. Life is good.
And that's it. That's the story of Jack 3. And, well, I liked most of it, but there's some pretty glaring issues I've got to dig into here. I know there's 3 more games in the series left that I still haven't played yet, so I'm going to try and keep in mind that some of these problems I have might be answered later. But I'm pretty sure only one of them is a direct sequel to Jack 3, and it's a racing game, so I'm not sure really what to expect next. Overall, this ending is insanely climactic. The ever-rising stakes and tension, the dramatic character interactions, the reveals, it's all very epic, but also a bit unsatisfying coming into it so close to having finished the first 2, and left me with several questions. Like, in some ways, it feels like they failed to pay off some of the dynamics introduced in the first game. It's time I talked about this. What is up with Kira? She was a pivotal character for the first 2 games, the closest Jack's ever been with anyone except Daxter, and she's been his real love interest for 2 video games so far. Suddenly, in Jack 3, she's been relegated to less than 5 lines across the game's 10 hours of story, and after 2 fake-out kisses between Kira and Jack, we finally get an endgame kiss, and it's not with her? Instead, it's with Ashlyn, who is a cool enough character in her own right, and who did have a little bit of chemistry with Jack in the second game, but I thought that was for more of an implied love triangle to raise the tension between him and Kira. I didn't know they were going to just shelf Kira and reduce her involvement to nothing. Not to mention, Jack too heavily implied that Ashlyn and Torn were a thing. I'm a grown man complaining about the romance arc writing of a video game meant for teenagers here, so I'm going to wrap this up. But I am also a writer, and this is an insane route to take it, is all I'm trying to say.
Don't make me come down there from this perch. I got a perch for you, Birdie, right here. Twirl it. That's it. It's go time. Bring it on, Bird Brain.
Enough! If I wanted you to fight, I would have commanded it.
So I do have a theory as to what's going on here. I think what might have happened is that when the developers couldn't manage to get Anna Garduno to reprise her role as Kira for whatever reason, they decided to shift the story to focus on a romance between Jack and Ashlyn, and were perhaps planning to sideline Kira hard, which is why she has no lines whatsoever in the first cutscene we see her in. But then they gave Kira a voice actress anyway in the form of Tara Strong, who's been in literally everything that's ever been made. And Strong would continue to voice Kira for the remainder of the series, so at that point, why not give her a bigger role? Were they already too deep into development with too little time to change it? What is going on here? I had some speculative ideas as I played that maybe Kira was jealous of Jack and Ashlyn and voted to banish him, which made her feel guilty later. Like, them letting him get exiled is very much so glossed over, but that's not the case, which is a good thing because that would have been a terrible assassination of her character. I don't know what's up with this. It's really the biggest hiccup of the game's narrative in my opinion. Jack got his kiss from Ashlyn, Sig got the throne of Spargus, Daxter and Tess got each other, Samos got resolution to his life's work, and Kira, well, she got to stand there beside her dad, shafted by the story. When I finished Jack 2, I felt satisfied. I was looking forward to Jack 3, but I was okay waiting to see it. I was content. Finishing Jack 3, I feel confused, and I'm pining to start the next one in hopes that I'll get some answers here, particularly about why Jack and Ashlyn are suddenly a thing and what happened between him and Kira. I'm even concerned that this won't be addressed at all, which would be really disappointing, but we'll see what happens.
I'll drive. Jack, you get on the gun. Daxter, just get in, sit down, and shut up.
My thoughts of Jack 3 have been shaky from the time I started playing to the time I was finishing up this script. I went from loving it to only just really liking it, back to calling it a masterpiece, and then clarifying that it did have its flaws and so on. Many of my grievances are borderline negligible even, but the fact that they're there is so unfortunate because this game is almost a perfect trilogy closer. In fact, I'd still call it one of the best third entries in a trilogy I've ever seen. Like I've been saying throughout my coverage, this game takes nearly everything its predecessors did and doubles down to do it all better and then some. And even with these strange quirks around the writing, it's still got a better story than 95% of the video games I've played, so my criticisms here are expecting you to take for granted the fact that this game is among the best of the best. But that's enough about the story, I think. Let's talk about Jack 3's endgame offerings.
Man, those babies sure stuffed their faces. We saw one gulp a load of kangaroos not too long ago. Stupid rats. They just sat...
Just like the first two games, Jack 3 lets players back into the open world after the main story is over and done with, and assuming you're not a hardcore ultra-completionist, then there's probably a lot of orbs left to find and challenges to complete. That's about it though. I mean, I'm not knocking it, the main game is already over 10 hours long, and playing the game is honestly fun enough to justify driving around and just having fun in the world. Not to mention the massive amount of unlockables you get by collecting precursor orbs across the game. If you want to go through the story mode again, but keep all of your previously acquired upgrades and unlocks, then you can utilize the hero mode to create a separate save file and do just that with an increased difficulty to balance it all out. I personally feel like we missed an opportunity to do more with the Marauder faction here in the post-game though. We could have had stuff like a series of Radiant quests centered around stopping Marauder assaults until we eventually cleanse their entire camp and liberate the wasteland of their presence, which would have been sick. We do get something similar in a few of these challenges, but it's kind of just a time killer, honestly. I recognize that they were probably in a rush to get this thing done, but I mean the endgame really could have used another once-over. Like when we go to the gun course room, Tess is still there, and she's still a human when she should be an Otzel, and the metalheads and KG deathbots are still running rampant across the city as if nothing we did to free the city mattered. It's a little bit invalidating to everything we did across the story. But whatever, these are minor nitpicks. I just wanted to point them out is all.
Look, coloring book, we've had a hard week. Don't push it.
The gameplay of Jack 3 is nearly identical to the gameplay of Jack 2, and by extension, the Precursor Legacy. We see the same movement, progression, and combat loop that we've become so familiar with over the trilogy so far. What we really need to talk about is the new abilities which take center stage this time around. The first thing I want to cover is Dark Jack, which if you've seen my coverage of Jak 2, you'll recall I loved in the second game but lamented the lack of occasions to properly employ it. Well, not only are his dark powers more relevant to the narrative this time around, but using them will be repeatedly integral to the progression of multiple missions across the game, and with even more instances where it's just obvious that you're expected to, even though it's optional, especially near the end. It's also so much better now. In the second game, I'd find myself second guessing using the ability because it took so long to charge it back up, and I wouldn't want to use it too early. But now you can activate it without having to fully fill the meter, so if it's a quarter full, you can still transform, but it'll just deplete faster. Also, just being in a transform state doesn't use up the meter either, which is huge, since you feel less pressure to mash the attack button in fear of wasting it. Only attacks use up energy from the meter. We also gain 2 new dark powers in the form of Dark Invisibility and the Dark Strike. The Dark Invisibility is only usable in conjunction with special objects inside of the Precursor Temple, but can be upgraded later to be activated anytime. The Dark Strike ability is Jak's very own Kamehameha Wave. I mean, what else do you need to see? It's self-explanatory and awesome. It's not only fun to use against enemies, but also needed to get past certain obstacles in the latter half of the game. Overall, Jak 3 just features a significantly better use of the Dark Jack mechanic, but it doesn't end there, not by a long shot.
I give you a new light power, one which will help you reach new places. Places only in your dreams.
I already mentioned Light Jack several times, so you should already get the idea here. His new light eco powers come in the form of 4 new abilities. Flash Freeze, a power that slows time allowing Jak to platform certain elements easier or give him an edge in combat. Light Regeneration, which lifts Jak into the air and restores his health, and also the light ability I used the most for obvious reasons. Light Shield, which envelops Jak in an energy shield to protect him from attacks, and probably the ability I used the least since I rarely saw place for it. And Light Flight, a new power that grants Jak the ability to leap great distances, although despite what the name implies, doesn't actually let you fly. Honestly, just this power alone offers the biggest lure to play the post-game since there's so many areas around the world it allows you to reach. You'll notice all of these powers are more defensive or exploratory in function, which balances out the aggressive nature of the Dark Jak mode. It also ties this game back to the Precursor legacy in a big way since we saw Jak's ability to absorb and utilize light eco in the finale of that first game. Not to mention, his stance in this mode is sick. Together, these 2 transformations pay off everything the series has been building up to and gives the player a fully realized iteration of Jak in his purest form, having mastered the dark and light powers within him to become a balanced hero. Sometimes, superpowers aren't enough though, and you gotta brandish that iron.
Plus, I kinda like the sign with the Otzelet outside.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
We use it for target practice.
Hey!
So up to this point, you've seen me using all kinds of crazy weapons throughout the video, and all of these come to the player in the form of weapon mods. In Jak 2, we had our morph gun with 4 different mods that changed the kind of function it had with a corresponding color and eco type. For all intents and purposes, these weapon mods are stand-ins for gun types, with the scattergun being a shotgun, the blaster being a semi-automatic rifle, the Vulcan Fury being a minigun, and the Peacemaker being a kind of rocket launcher with a pinch of BFG from Doom. Jak 3 decided that wasn't nearly enough guns to play with and opted to toss players 8 additional weapon mods to the morph gun, coming out to 2 more per eco color. The red eco scattergun gets the wave concussor, which can be charged and shot into the ground to create an enormous shockwave and ended up being a new favorite of mine, and the plasmite RPG, which is just a grenade launcher and I rarely used it. The blaster adds in the beam reflexor that turns regular shots into ricochet ammo that bounces all over the rooms and ended up being super useful in various missions. I loved this one. And the gyro burster, which shoots out a hovering turret that seeks out and fires at enemies. It's a bit more of a situational weapon, but still came in clutch for me repeatedly. The Vulcan Fury sees its additions in the arc wielder, which shoots out a lightning Tesla arc that eradicated enemies and was easily my second favorite new weapon mod, and the needle laser that fires out heat-seeking needle-like bullets like the name implies. I liked this one too, but used it less. Finally, the Peacemaker gets the mass inverter, which is basically an anti-gravity gun that I only found a good use for in one level, but it did basically get me through that one level that I was struggling with. And the Supernova, which I talked about already and needs no elaboration beyond just seeing it in action. One of the single biggest new features Jak 3 boasts is its dune buggy driving and combat. Of course, the leapers and zoomers are present as well, but both of these mounts had prior appearances in the first and second games respectively, and play pretty much the same as they did before. The buggies, on the other hand, are something brand new to the series, and everything about it is cool, except actually playing it. Sometimes. There's a variety of different buggies for the player to drive, several of which need to be unlocked through the menu via collecting and spending precursor orbs, and others which we gain access to by just playing the game. The 5 buggies we unlock by progressing the story are the Tough Puppy, the Sand Shark, the Dune Hopper, the Gila Stomper, and the Slam Dozer. The 3 that need to be unlocked via precursor orbs are the Heat Seeker, the Dust Demon, and the Desert Screamer. The truth is that they all drive pretty similarly to one another with a few tweaks to each of their handling. The 2 vehicles with the biggest differences are the Dune Hopper and the Gila Stomper, and the reason is because the Hopper is needed to access certain areas because of its high jumps, and the Stomper is the only vehicle that can fire behind you, which is actually way more handy than you might think, like mad useful sometimes. And then of course there's the factory car, which we can drive for a brief period during the assault on the KG Deathbot factory. I mean, it's a really cool sequence, but much like all of the buggy sections, is also quite hard to control. Overall, even though they're a little wonky to deal with, I have to say that I really did have a great time with the Wasteland and buggy sections, because they're just so much fun.
Hey, wait a minute! They have pants!
The buggies are great, but one of my single favorite new additions to Jak 3 are the Daxter sections. We get to play as Daxter in 1 or 2 scripted sequences in Jak 2, but this time he gets multiple dedicated platforming and combat sections all to himself. This again shows his growth as he frequently volunteers to throw himself into the fray just to help Jak. He doesn't love it, of course, but he's clearly got a ton of confidence in himself, and Jak's fostering of his capabilities has grown him up in a big way. As for the sections themselves, I think they're cool. They play well and give the game even more gameplay diversity than it had before, further lending to this idea that this is an epic conclusion, you know? Like everything really has been leading up to this. It would have been easy to keep Dax the same across all 3 games and relegate him to a sidekick NPC, only good for voice lines and a gameplay gimmick or 2, but he's really showing how much he's grown up throughout this game by willingly tackling dangerous sections and even engaging in combat against enemies. Oh, and speaking of Daxter, Jak 3 even brings back the Daxter Game Over screens from the Precursor legacy, and they're even funnier than before. But they only show up sometimes, making them more rare and enjoyable than the first game.
Where are the moves, man? I'm wondering. Where are they?
Overall, I love how Daxter was handled in this game, and think his sections are a major benefit to the experience. Much like the minigames, of which there are a lot more than previous entries. Like the satellite minigame near the start of the story, or the Pac-Man Eco Grid game. Not to mention the returning gun course, where we even get a Ratchet and Clank themed course to play through. Yeah, this series loves to wear its Ratchet & Clank inspiration on its sleeves.
We took it to that robot goon and kicked his nuts and bolts.
And of course, I have to talk about the music, which has seen some major changes from the previous game. Jak 2 is very well known for its dynamic music system that changes based on the player's actions, which I talked about in my coverage of that game, but Jak 3 opted to ditch that system in favor of a more conventional soundtrack that just plays a single looped track depending on which area the player is in. Being newer to the series like I am, I'm not really sure how the fanbase feels about this change, but I actually like it. Don't get me wrong, I really liked the dynamic music system, but something about the way Jak 3's tracks are written makes everything feel far more climactic and exciting. I have no problem saying Jak 3 has the best score of the series so far, with some of my favorite tracks of the games I've played. Again, and I know I keep saying this, but there were certain tracks that evoked this intense feeling like I was playing out the events that everything we did in the past 2 games had been leading up to this. The dynamic system was cool, but these tracks are better.
Take your destiny into your own hands. Look, sand cannot keep a shape by itself, but add water, and it becomes malleable. Fate can be such if you add the right element.
Jak 3 is some of the most fun I've had playing through a video game in a while. Normally when I'm playing through a game for footage, I end up playing for around 1 or 2 hours before I wrap it up and work on something else for the rest of the day. With Jak 3, I would get through a 1 to 2 hour session and then end up coming back for more later that same day, which is honestly just about the biggest compliment I can give to a game at this point. The world is fun to play in, the characters are exciting, the environments are varied and interesting, but most importantly, the gameplay loop is so distinctly massive that Jak 3 is almost multiple games in one. It's a beat-em-up game, a platforming game, a shooter game, a driving game, and a narrative-driven game all wrapped up into one with various minigames and additional subsections all glued together with a plethora of, for lack of a better word, epic level set pieces. Yes, it's true that the game is a bit shorter and smaller overall than Jak 2, and that the writing quite possibly got too big for its own good, as it wound up letting a few important characters slip through the cracks. But very few games are without flaw. Jak 3 is still one of the best conclusions to a trilogy I've ever seen, and deserves a place among the greats when any conversation about the best threequels comes up. Am I saying that Jak 3 is one of the best PS2 games ever released? Well, yeah, but am I saying it's one of the greatest video games ever made?
May I remind you that this team of Daxter, Jak, and Daxter have taken on just about every scary thing this world can throw at us for 3, count 'em, 3 adventures.
Yeah, I kind of am.
Oh, well, why didn't you say so in the first place?
But with that said, I have to say that with kind of an asterisk to it. And that's the fact that Jak 3 might not be quite as good of a straight-up video game as Jak 2 is. There's admittedly a lot of improvements that Jak 3 holds over its predecessor, like the set pieces, new weapons, powers, and vehicles, grander scale, and significantly improved difficulty balance. But Jak 2 is the kind of game you can play start to finish without ever needing to play another game from the series, while trying to play Jak 3 without having played Jak 2 would be missing part of the experience. Jak 2 is a fantastic video game, but Jak 3 is a fantastic conclusion to Jak 2, more so than it is a great game in its own right. I don't really mean to say that as a criticism, but more so to point out that if you're interested in playing this series but aren't interested in going through the more whimsical first game, then that's fine. I'd say you're good skipping straight to Jak 2. But if you think the buggy combat looks cool and want to jump straight to the grittier tone of Jak 3, I'd have to advise against it. Jak 3 is best played to conclude Jak 2, rather than to enjoy it for its own merits, which is by no means a detractor of its quality, but more so a reality of its design. I'm still in awe of how much this game managed to achieve in the short year-long development cycle it had to do so, but I'm even more shocked that I'm walking away from it thinking about how it should be studied by other developers regarding how to end their trilogies. Like I said from the start, making a video game is hard. Making a good video game is even harder, but concluding a trilogy of 2 spectacular previous games with an even more powerful third entry is a task so hard that the majority of trilogy enders wound up being examples of how not to do it instead of being a demonstration of the optimal. I think you get the point. With all of that said and done, as much as I loved this game, I do now find myself with a lot of unanswered questions about this world, and I'm really hoping that the next game has some answers.